Hi guys, I am Roranoa. This video is about what if Gohan was sent to Naruto World and became part of Shinobi Part 3. Hope you like my video. Please subscribe, like and share Roranoa TV for more fanfiction crossover videos. The genin that had succeeded to get both the Sky and Earth scrolls had been able to enter the tower that was located inside the Forest of Death. In there, the Hokage and respective Junin of each team, all of them gathering inside the tower, where an arena was located. The arena had the peculiarity of having two platforms at separate sides of the arena, as well as a giant statue of two hands gesturing a jutsu. In front of this statue, the third Hokage stood as in front of him the successful genin also stood, giving him a respectful look, even the ones that came from foreign villages. At the side of the gathered genin, each of the Junin of the teams that had succeeded stood, with an even more serious look than the one their students possessed. For the first time in years, maybe decades or maybe ever, the rookie teams got to reach the third phase of the exams after the bloody and harsh Forest of Death. Although even in spite of this, one of the 5 genin teams participating, died at the hands of unknown shinobi. The remaining rookie teams knew they hadn't succeeded as they were nowhere to be seen, yet they remained ignorant about their deaths. Sasuke, who had just recovered 2 hours before arriving at the tower, was rubbing the back of his neck, as pain annoyed him. After the fight against Orochimaru, Sakura had checked the Uchiha while Naruto covered them as they were still in the middle of the forest. At that moment, the pink-haired girl noticed a bite in his neck, and next to it, a seal-like black mark, which concerned the girl. She decided not to tell her blonde teammate, fearing that he could get concerned and get distracted from his current objective of covering her while she checked Sasuke. Sakura has told Sasuke about the mysterious mark, although he didn't seem to care much about it. Naruto, totally ignorant about the weird mark the Uchiha has in his neck, watched him curiously, raising one of his eyebrows in the process. On the other hand, Haruno had mentioned to the Uchiha about the mark, as it was really inevitable for him to notice, although even she didn't had a mere idea of what the seal's properties were. The Hokage stood down in the arena, his silver-haired assistant on his right side, with his crossed hands hanging in his lower back, looking at the successful genin. His assistant had part of his face covered with bandages, as well as his left arm, which was covered almost entirely. His legs struggled more than they normally did to hold his weight, as the effort he had realized just the day before to arrive at the village as soon as possible had just gotten all of him. The Junin, who were standing firmly in the platforms that where the public was going to see the battles from. To his left side, a sick-looking Junin, already familiar for Team 10, was standing as firmly as he could, although he still had his typical sick-looking face. Congratulations, young genin, you have achieved what very little shinobi of your level do, making you already exceptional for making it up to this phase. Sarutobi kept his typical calm tone as he spoke. Unfortunately, due to there being more of you than there should be, we'll have to make some preliminary matches to reduce the number of participants. Hayate Gecko will explain the rules in detail. The third beckoned the Junin to step forward and continue with the explanation, which he did without hesitation. Something got Gohan during the speech, and it was the use of certain word. More of you than there should be. Gohan's teeth clenched as he remembered the way the leader of the village talked about the dead of kids as if it was nothing. Gohan already knew that the world he was currently at needed reforms, and quick, but he never imagined that a beloved leader like the Hokage would be able to talk about such things as if it was nothing and yet still be as loved and respected as he was. Alright, Hayate coughed a couple of times before starting. Whoever wins the battle qualifies for the next and final phase of the Chunin exams. He coughed once more before continuing. This matches will be 1v1 battles in which things such as injuring badly and killing are allowed. Gohan clenched his teeth once more, now making his teammates notice his fury. And that's for the rules, we'll now proceed to the matches themselves. Hayate pointed at a screen that was at the left side of the statue, where several names started to pop up. The first 2 names that appeared in the screen were Sasuke Uchiha and Yoroi Kato. The 2 named genin, please stay in the arena, the rest of you, please go to the platforms alongside your teachers. Sasuke was pretty confident of himself, as usual, but his opponent also seemed to have a lot of self-confidence. The rest of the genin left for their respective places in the platforms alongside their genin, being the shinobi of the leaf on one side, and the ones from the sand and the sound on the opposite platform. Kakashi received his students with a smile, although they were only able to tell thanks to his only visible eye, as well as an innocent and seemingly calm wave. Naruto replied with another wave, making Sakura do the same. Meanwhile, Asuma just received his own students with a nod, as he was getting his cigarette ready. Might Guy, probably the one who got the most attention, congratulated his students and began to cry along with Lee, as both were proud of themselves and the rest of the team. Kurenai congratulated her students too, but in a colder way than Guy did. Genma received his students with a cold and serious expression, making his students uneasy, but finally gave up to his laugh, congratulating his students, Team 5, for their splendid performance to have reached that point. Hayate positioned himself in the center of the arena as Yuichi and the Hokage left the place, surprising Gohan as he expected the old man to watch the matches. "I'll be the referee," the lizard expert announced as he beckoned the genin to get ready, and as soon as they were in their respective fighting stances, he raised his voice once again. "Go." The Uchiha quickly threw a kunai he had already grabbed from his pocket, getting some time as his opponent had to move the upper part of his body to save his body. Sasuke gave the man a low kick on his feet, causing him to fall down, making him fall above the Uchiha, with his hands pointing to him. His black eyes quickly turned to an intense red as he saw that his opponent's hands covered in chakra. He got his hands in the floor and quickly lifted his entire body, successfully dodging the chakra-covered hands of his opponent, taking advantage of his positions and aiming a kick to Yoroi's face as he tried to stand up, being dodged by him and quickly counterattacked. Thanks to his Sharingan, he was able to jump back as soon as he saw a kunai aiming at his ribs. Red Eyes now looked right at him, causing him to inevitably feel intimidated, although he still went closer to proceed with his plan. The Sharingan remained an advantage for Sasuke, as he once again was able to dodge without much effort the attempts of Yoroi of engaging a close-range battle. On the other hand, Sasuke insisted in pressuring him from long distance, throwing kunai and groups of shuriken at the other shinobi, hoping for one to hit him, although it would just be a plus to his main objective, earn some extra time to see if he was able to burn his energies down. Kakashi had been concentrated in his pupil's fight from the start, and he was surprised of his abilities to keep the enemy away. He truly made his teacher quite proud. On the other hand, Naruto was already starting to get desperate at the lack of offensive movement from his friend, which even Sakura identified as an effective strategy. "Come on, Sasuke. Do something." The blonde desperately yelled at his teammate, who struggled not to get distracted from the screams. Kakashi turned to look at his other two pupils, witnessing as Sakura hit Naruto in the of his head, finally shutting him up. Yoroi continued his efforts on engaging short-range combat, although this time, he was able to hit his opponent's abdomen as he had late reaction due to the screams of his teammate. Sasuke was hit as he was still in the air, which sent him away and made him receive more damage due to the fall. He stood up without many problems, but if it wasn't enough, his neck's mark started to give him a stinging pain, which caused him to fall on his knee. Yoroi took the opportunity and, without hesitation, jumped on his opponent, getting one of his hands on the neck of the Uchiha, and the other one on his face, blocking his sight. The man's hands were once again covered with chakra as Sasuke felt his energy being drained at an alarming pace. Sakura glared at the blonde kid, to which he responded with a nervous smile, then turning to true fear as the green eyes of his friend filled with fury. Naruto turned to his master, who just shrugged at him before turning back to the battle. The pink-haired girl gave Naruto such a strong hit in his forehead, that the sound of it called even Gaara's attention. The Uchiha was desperately trying to get the hands off of him, but he just wasn't strong enough to do it, his desperation increasing as time went by, his strength reducing and his body starting to give up. The black mark of his neck, which had been hurting Sasuke more and more as Yoroi kept absorbing his energy, suddenly spread through his body, leaving half of it covered with black spots in his skin. His grip suddenly got stronger, actually so strong that he broke his enemy's wrist, getting rid of the hands that was grabbing his neck and now being able to focus on just one hand. Kakashi noticed this and instantly figured out what was happening, as he had heard about Anko's story before, turning to his students to see if there was any interesting reaction. As Ino's cheers for Sasuke were heard in the background, Sakura had a concerned expression, even though the copy nin knew that she should be cheering the Uchiha up just as her rival was doing. Although those two weren't the only ones concerned about the situation, as Gohan felt an evil energy take over the Uchihas, joining Sakura and the Junin from the leaf. Naruto was absolutely clueless of what was happening, turning to Sakura, too, becoming afraid as soon as he noticed the expression the pink-haired girl had. As this happened, Sasuke had already the man's other wrist, making him unable to fight. Yoroi was no practically unable to realize any jutsu, as well as being menaced by the red-eyed's maniac expression glaring directly at his soul. He tried to stand up, but the Uchiha increased his speed and gave him a direct kick in the chest that caused him to lose his respiration for a while. Then, the young Avenger got a kunai and threw it to his opponent, nailing it directly in his forehead, and therefore, killing him. Ano's cheers stopped as silence and concerned and horrified expressions filled the room. Kakashi disappeared and reappeared at Sasuke's side. The lizard expert checked on the man's pulse, confirming his dead to Kakashi by shaking his head. Yoroi Ikuto is dead, which leaves Sasuke Uchiha as the winner of the battle. Naruto's face was now filled by utter horror as he had seen his friend commit such an atrocity. Sasuke collapsed down to the floor as the effects of the seal passed, being raised by Kakashi, disappearing right after having the Uchiha in his arms. Kakashi had taken his pupil to a dark room that was within the tower, a secret room used for sealing practices as well as actual important seals, just as the seal for the Jinchuriki. Inside the room, a circular seal-like symbol decorated the floor, in which the silver-haired Junin left the now unconscious Sasuke. The copy nin made some gestures with his hand before getting his right hand and pressing it against the mark the boy had in his neck. Some steam went out of the mark as the seal started to make effect. This caused Sasuke to suddenly wake up and start screaming. Kakashi used his other arm to keep the pressure going against the mark until the seal was done. As another mark appeared around the original one, steam stopped coming out of the mark, although the pain caused from before had caused the Uchiha to fell unconscious once more. Kakashi stood up as he gave his pupil a look, sighing as he felt a bit bad of having caused so much damage to him. Although as he was about to take him to leave him in the nursery, he felt the sudden appearance of someone. He turned without hesitation, ready to fight, but he lost his composure as soon as he noticed the man's face, his visible eye as widened as it could be. "You've grown a lot, Kakashi," Orochimaru said with a creepy tone, smiling maniacally as he noticed the legs of the copy nin, which were trembling. Kakashi made several hand gestures and got his hands in a position every shinobi that knew about the copy nin could recognize. Orochimaru laughed maniacally as sparks covered the silver-haired Junin's hand, which only made him even more scared than he already was. "Get away or die, I won't even hesitate to do it, and I don't care if you're a Sannin or not. Come on, Kakashi, you know there is no way you can defeat me." Orochimaru answered with an arrogant tone in his voice, a confident smile decorating his face. "There's no need to be so violent, I just wanted to check on my Sasuke." "Your Sasuke." The silver-haired ninja got ready to attack the Sannin at any moment, although the snake-like man had already noticed it. Orochimaru laughed confidently at the question. "You know he'll come to me for power," he said before turning around towards the exit of the room, disappearing as soon as Kakashi was about to nail his Raikiri in the Sannin's chest. The Junin ignored this and took Sasuke to the nursery, where he ordered for Anbu guards to take care of him, which was granted to him. Kabuto turned to his side, noticing that Masumi, his other teammate, was back at the arena, meaning that the plan had been successful. Masumi noticed the absence of Yoroi, and as Kabuto shook his head, he figured what had happened to him. Kabuto decided to surrender in his match, his job was done for now. Suddenly, a Junin from the sound appeared behind him, nodding at them as a way of greeting them. Kakashi suddenly appeared behind his pupils as the names of the chosen genin for the next match. "Shiho Hisahima and Kabuto Yakushi, please come down here to go ahead with the next battle," Hayate announced as both genin went down to the arena, quickly getting in the same spots where Sasuke and Yoroi had been standing just some minutes ago. Naruto was quite curious of what Kabuto was really able to do, as well as Gohan was about Shiho, although this last one was clearly scared about fighting after seeing what had happened to Yoroi. Her glasses trembled as Hayate bent over to give the signal. The half-Saiyan joined Shiho's team in the cheers for Shiho, catching her by surprise, just as the same time as Naruto started to support Kabuto. Both turned to look at each other, deciding just with their looks that they would compete to see which one of the two would win. "Go," Hayate announced, causing Shiho to jump back and get her hands on the pockets hanging in each side of her shorts. "I surrender," Kabuto coldly said with his right hand raised, nodding at Hayate as he received a confused look from the lizard expert. Hayate raised one of his eyebrows, then sighing in disappointment before standing straight once again. "Then, the winner of this match is Shiho Hisahima, I guess." Naruto fell back out of disappointment as Gohan's jaw dropped down to the floor. Kabuto left the arena uninterestedly before waving Hayate out, which only made the lizard expert more confused as this was supposed to actually try. Oh, you're facing a 4-1. Kiba said, turning to his teammate as he spoke, being ignored by him as the bug expert just turned in the opposite direction and started to walk towards the stairs of the platform they were in. That is, quite rude. Kiba cringed at his teammate's response before turning to look at the arena. Do you think he'll be okay? A worried Hinata asked as she put her hands together in her chest while looking down at the arena, where her teammate was already facing who would be his opponent. I'm sure he will beat that guy easily. Kiba said with a sure tone, transmitting the feeling to his friend, who nodded in agreement. Shino's cold stare was blocked by his black glasses. His opponent adopted his fighting stance as Hayate got ready to give the starting signal for the pair of genin. The bug expert got his hands in the pockets of his gray jacket as he kept half of his head hidden behind his jacket. He analyzed the black clothes that covered his opponent's body, which helped him finish his plan. Go! Hayate yelled, hoping that none of them would surrender. Kankuro immediately went for his opponent, pressuring his opponent with punches and kick, all being dodged by the bug expert. Shino glared disappointedly at his opponent, who already had the Abarame's parasites inside his body. Kankuro continued his attack until he suddenly stopped moving. The covered object in his back dropped to the floor, causing him to start moving again, throwing several kunai at the Abarame, taking advantage of his distraction. One actually hit him, in the right arm, although insects were quick to take it out and seal the injury. Surrender, Shino said after getting back to his straight stance, being followed by the noise of a crack, which surprised even himself. I see. So it was a puppet. The Abarame calmly walked to the side of object his opponent was holding in his back. You are hiding in there, aren't you? A hand with a blade quickly escaped the bandages that covered it, aiming at the Abarame's legs, failing and working as a bridge for the stream of bugs that went out of Shino's sleeve. The screams of Kankuro were heard from inside the bandages, which made Hayate stop the fight and give Shino the win. Hayate summoned a normal-sized ninja lizard, who used a little blade to tear the bandages, revealing the almost bug-covered body of the puppeteer. The lizard used his saliva to kill some of the bugs, giving Kankuro the opportunity of surviving. What a useless piece of shit. Gaara said with an angry tone, turning his stare away from the arena. Tamari looked at her little brother with fear, turning into relief as she saw her other brother be saved by the Junin of the leaf. You're welcome, young one. The little lizard said, receiving a nod in response. The lizard nodded back before disappearing into smoke, leaving Hayate for himself once again. Kankuro now had to go back and face his little brother, having chills just from imagining his hateful glare. He was received by a palm in the back from his master, the ninja Hayate had faced against during that mission in Suna, although the lizard expert still hadn't noticed his presence. Tamari hugged him as she had been horrified at the thought of losing him, although she quickly stopped hugging him and just gave him a slight hit in the head. Kankuro laughed nervously, trying to relieve his fear for Gaara's reaction. The puppeteer was relieved to see that the redhead ignored his presence. Alive another day, huh? Not bad, Kankuro thought to himself. The screen started to show several random letters, progressively forming an understandable word and stopping at another pair of names. Ino Yamanaka and Sakura Haruno. Hayate announced. Sakura's eyes widened in astonishment while Ino, although surprised, was kind of excited to see how much her friend had improved. Naruto noticed the pink-haired girl's nervousness, to which he responded by placing one of his hands on her shoulder. Don't worry, Sakura, I know you can do it. Her green eyes were filled with determination by Naruto's thumbs up and typical wide smile. She nodded in response before walking towards the stairs. This win is yours. Gohan cheered as Ino nodded back at him in reassurance. We trust in you. Shikamaru and Choji nodded in confirmation, giving Ino even more motivation to wipe the floor with her once best friend. She walked towards the stairs, finding the pink-haired girl in the way. The blonde-haired girl had noticed that her friend now had shorter hair, which made her curious, remembering how she decided to leave it long due to the rumors of Sasuke preferring girls with long hair. She gave her a quick glance before raising her voice. Why did you cut your hair? She caught the pink-haired girl by surprise. I thought Sasuke liked girls with long hair. That was just a rumor, I can't live based in rumors. Sakura replied, giving the blonde girl a smile. Ino was surprised to witness the change her friend had also experienced psychologically. Well, I guess that makes sense, she said, turning her gaze to the referee, who was getting closer as they spoke. I think I like my long hair, though. Yeah, it seems so. Sakura said as stopped for a moment. Let's have a great battle, okay. She extended her hand to her friend. Right. As Ino shook the pink-haired girl's hand, she noticed that it was sweaty. She glanced at the girl's face, her right eyebrow raised, finding a seemingly calm and honest smile. She imagined that her rival was just nervous, ignoring it and smiling back. Gohan's and Naruto's cheers filled the arena as a silent Rock Lee hoped for Sakura to come out as the winner. Choji joined the cheers as he finished his bag of chips, causing Shikamaru to stand next to his teammates, although not cheering Ino up. Asuma smiled at this, laying in the wall as he smoked a cigarette. Kakashi just admired how Naruto still cheered his friend despite everyone else rooting for or just saying Ino would win, showing his confidence and trust in the pink-haired kunoichi. He smiled under his mask as he turned to Lee, who seemed quite concerned despite being silent. The two kunoichi adopted their respective, being Sakura's a defensive one and Ino's one Sakura knew quite well. Go! Hayate yelled, marking the start of the match. The blonde girl started to quickly make gestures with her hands, alerting Sakura of what was coming. She then placed her hands together in front of her, creating a circle-like space between her hands and pointing it to her opponent. The pink-haired kunoichi had already ran away, which forced Ino to move her hands to try and effectuate her jutsu, failing to as Sakura started to approach her with a kunai in her hand. The blonde kunoichi waited for the pink-haired one, a kunai of herself in her hand, which she used to block the attack of her opponent. Sparks started to ignite from the kunais as each clash was stronger than the last one. Ino jumped back and threw her kunai towards the pink-haired kunoichi, it getting deflected, winning time to perform her jutsu once again. This time, Ino was successful in her plan, getting into Sakura's mind and gaining control over her body, although her own body fell down to the floor in consequence of her jutsu. As soon as she gained control over the pink-haired kunoichi's body, the screaming voice of inner Sakura was heard, disabling Ino's capacity of concentrating, which caused her to quickly lose control and be expelled from the pink-haired's mind. Nice try, Ino, Sakura said as she regained composure, her rival struggling to stand up as she was dizzy after the screams of inner Sakura. Ino clenched her teeth in frustration as her plan had failed at the first try. She never really expected her rival to have such a strong mind. Although the pink-haired kunoichi was quick to make a mistake, it being to let Ino regain composure. The blonde girl threw a handful of shuriken at Sakura, which the girl tried to dodge, failing to and deflecting one that aimed at her arm by the last second. As soon as Sakura put attention to her surroundings, Ino was already next to her, aiming a punch at her ribs and successfully nailing it. Sakura noticed that the punch wasn't as strong as it should have been, yet still kneeling down while covering her ribs because of the pain, being right there and then when she noticed Ino's strong respiration. Gohan was the first one to notice the consequences of Ino's exhaustion from their training before the exams, as he felt the sudden fall of her ki. She's tired, Gohan said, getting shocked expressions from Shikamaru and Choji as they were both surprised about Gohan's ability to notice that at such a long distance and about Ino being tired. Come on, Ino, Shikamaru yelled as Sakura stood up once again. And this now. Asuma would normally smile at the Nara's unusual care, but he was also concerned for Ino's battle. Naruto obviously noticed this, analyzing the blonde kunoichi as a result, noticing that she seemed to be quite tired due to her sweat and strong breathing. She's tired, Lee pointed out as he looked at Naruto, receiving a nod from the blonde genin. Sakura, this is your opportunity to win. Come on. Both Lee and Naruto yelled, motivating their friend to win the battle. Kakashi and Guy looked at each other with curious expressions. I see you're tired, I guess I do have a chance now. Sakura said, grabbing a kunai and dashing towards Ino before she could answer to her comment. The blade of the kunai brushed the blonde girl's arm, managing to make a little cut in it. Ino had jumped to one side, dodging the pink-haired kunoichi's quick attack, with their last energy reserves. The blonde kunoichi threw a kunai at Sakura before she landed, causing her to fall in order to avoid it. Ino rushed to her rival, who was laying face down, sitting on her back and grabbing her wrists, disabling any attack possibilities. Sakura tried to resist her rival's grip, but she was finally defeated by a hit with the heel in the ribs from Ino. Release her to see if she can do something, Hayate said, to which Ino obeyed. Sakura did not move as the pain in her ribs was just too much to deal with. Then I guess you're the winner, Hayate told the blonde girl, standing up straight and getting ready to announce the winner. Naruto and Lee watched with a disappointed expression as the pink-haired Kunoichi wasn't able to stand up, which actually caused the cheers from Team 10 and even Asuma, who had spent the entire match hiding his nerves behind his cigarette. The winner is Ino Yamanaka. Ino fell down to the floor out of exhaustion, with a relieved smile in her face as Kakashi and Asuma appeared from a cloud of smoke to take their respective students. Team 10 continued to cheer. "Want me to take you to the nursery?" Asuma asked as he kept smoking, receiving a negative response from his student. "Alright then, but try to at least sit down while watching the rest of the matches." On the other side, Kakashi had taken Sakura to the nursery without even asking, as he knew that she had to at least have some broken ribs after receiving those 2 hits in there. "I want to see Naruto's fight." Her green eyes were filled with determination as she said this. That determination, that reminded to Rin's gaze, made him unable to deny her the right to watch her friend fight. He finally nodded in response before disappearing and appearing next to Naruto, who got scared. "Thanks for supporting me," Sakura said as she sat down next to Naruto, who gave her a thumbs up and a wide smile. Lee cringed as he was ignored by the green-eyed girl, widening his eyes as she finally acknowledged him. "You too." He was satisfied even though she had been warmer with Naruto. The screen had already showed the names of the next 2 contenders. Tenten and Tamari of the Sand. Hayate announced. Both of the Kunoichi, each one in opposite sides of the arena, started walking to the arena. They were really similar to one another, them being sure of themselves and actually quite talented for fighting, each having their own specialties, of course. Rock Lee cheered Tenten while Kankuro did the same for his sister, having Neji and Gaara apart, as they remained silent and uninterested about the match. Guy was also joining the cheers for Tenten, as he knew that if he wanted to keep his students motivated, he needed to cheer them up in important moments for them like this precise one. The 2 Kunoichi faced each other, Tamari with a self-confident expression and Tenten a simply serious one, which showed who cared more about the match. As Hayate announced the beginning of the fight, Tamari just got her giant fan to her side, which Tenten didn't take long to recognize as she was a weapon expert. Tenten didn't take long to try her first movement. She jumped up high as she summoned several weapons of all sorts, throwing them directly at the dark blonde Kunoichi. A grin appeared in the sand Kunoichi's face as she opened 1/3 of her giant folding fan and deflected all the weapons towards the place she had thought her opponent had landed, finding no one but explosive tags in the floor, which caused a chain of explosions as the weapons hit them after falling down. Tamari had no problem avoiding the explosions, but the dark and thick smoke still posed a problem for her, using her fan to get rid of said smoke. Suddenly, Tenten jumped out of the smoke, a chain scythe on her hand, and attacked Tamari. The sand Kunoichi was barely able to dodge her opponent's surprise attack, obviously not being able to use her fan quickly enough to push the brown-haired back. Tenten's scythe was still able to reach and cut some of Tamari's hair, snapping her out of her overconfidence. As her teeth clenched, her fan opened completely, showing her wish to finish the fight quickly. With force unusual for someone of her age, she raised her giant fan and agitated it several times, creating a wind blast aimed to catch the Kunoichi from the leaf. "You're mine," Tamari yelled with an angry tone as the burst of wind caught Tenten in midair. Her grin suddenly distorted into a shocked face as several explosive tags exploded at both sides of her. Unfortunately for Tenten, the explosions failed to fully reach the sand Kunoichi, although they still caused some minor burns in her legs and arms. Meanwhile, the gust was still causing several cuts to Tenten, who, after some minuted caught up inside the gust, finally fall down. Rock Lee's cheers had been silenced after her teammate had been caught up in the gust, but he was now totally worried for his friend. As Hayate announced Tamari's victory, the sand Kunoichi laughed at how easy, according to her, it had been to defeat her. "If you are this village's future, then it is doomed." A burst of laughter followed this phrase, although it stopped as soon as Lee entered with great speed at the arena, grabbing his teammate. "That's how you treat an opponent that fought honorarily against you?" Lee asked with an annoyed tone in his voice. "Even after such a worthy fight?" "Ha." Tamari gave the genin a grin. "You call that worthy?" She pointed at the now unconscious and bloody body of the brown-haired Kunoichi. "She was just unable to win from the very beginning, even if she did catch me by surprise once or twice." Lee did not responded to the Kunoichi of the sand, and took his teammate to his master, who took her to the nursery. As this happened, the screen showed the names of the next 2 contenders. Hinata Hyuga and Neji Hyuga. Hayate announced, causing Hinata to widen her eyes in horror. Everyone that knew both Hyugas were perfectly conscious of what the outcome of the fight would be. Hinata started to tremble out of fear, even shaking her head trying to deny the truth. Kiba palmed her in the back and gave her a smile. Don't worry, I know you can win. Kiba said with a calm voice, failing to calm the little girl down. You have to go now, they're waiting for you. Kurenai said with a cold voice. You'll find a way to deal with him, but for now, go down there. The shy girl obeyed with no hesitation, now finding herself facing Neji, who stared at her with angry eyes. Her horrified face gave Neji even more confidence than he already had. Naruto decided to cheer for the shy girl, remembering a little experience they shared when they were little kids. Gohan, who had felt the energies of both shinobi, just hoped for the girl to go out of it safe and sound. Go, Hayate announced. Let's go, Hinata. Naruto yelled from the platform, acting as an impulse for Hinata, who suddenly gained the motivation to fight her cousin. Both Hyuga were quick to activate their Byakugans, getting their palms ready for the battle. Neji obviously took the initiative and started a bombing of attacks, causing Hinata to be committed to defense from the very first second. For as much as the shy girl wanted to be able to give a decent challenge to her cousin and impress Naruto, she was just unable to. The overwhelming strength, speed and technique of the genius was just too much for her. Her lack of resistance finally paid off as one of Neji's hits finally reached the point it was aimed to, it being unfortunately Hinata's right shoulder. Now, Neji said to himself, aiming another hit at the opposite shoulder, achieving his objective. Now without any usable arms, being both of hers numb by Neji's hits, every hit the genius aimed at her would hit her without any problem. Naruto's cheers stopped, which made the Hyuga girl lose part of her motivation. She was hopeless now, vulnerable to the incredible power of her cousin. Gohan could just look away as one of Neji's palm hit the Hyuga right in the chest, no fear of killing her in his intentions. Hinata fell down, unconscious, as Kiba's yells filled a mostly silent arena. The winner is Neji Hyuga, Hayate announced, glancing at Neji in a try of searching any trait of regret. Guy shook his head in disappointed as Neji went back to his teammates. He always expected the best from his students. Kiba had ran to take Hinata to the nursery, but Kurenai interrupted him and took her herself. Neji had noticed the disappointment from his teacher, but he wasn't able to care less, seeing him as a loser even despite the fact that he was a Junin. On his back, a furious Nobuyuki was staring at him, and even though the genius knew it, he ignored him. Yakumo grabbed her teammate by the shoulder, snapping him out of his anger. The Genjutsu prodigy shook her head gesturing her disapproval of what he was doing, which got her a nod as a response. The half Hyuga turned back to the arena, where Hayate was already announcing the next contenders. Now it was him who put his hand in her teammate's shoulder as her name was called. Yakumo Kurama and Rock Lee. Hayate called, making Lee celebrate the arrival of his turn in the matches. The taijutsu expert jumped directly from the platform, landing in the arena and waving at Hayate, who just raised his eyebrow in response. Yakumo was way calmer than Lee, as she just went down through the stairs, keeping a slow pace as she was a bit nervous. Guy, just as with the rest of his students, was hiding the wish to cheer for them, as it had been ordered for them to be as neutral as they could be. Genma was feeling the exact same way, as he had just wanted to cheer for Shiho. He really hated this type of orders, but it was his duty as shinobi from the leaf to obey any orders from the Hokage. Wouldn't it be amazing if Yakumo also went through the next phase? Genma said as a smile decorated his face, gathering the attention of his students, who nodded back at him in response. It would, Shiho said as she turned back at the arena, where her teammate was already facing the one who would be her opponent. I'm guessing she won't let him make a single move without getting him, but we'll see. Hayate checked both genin with his eyes before making sure everything was fine. Go, Hayate yelled, taking some space between him and the genin. Alright, remember Hishiro. Yakumo thought, trying to calm down, before making very gestures with her hand very quickly, which had apparently no effect on Lee, who just continued to get closer. As soon as the kick met the kunoichi's head, her face turned to one of an ugly bat monster, scaring Lee and causing him to fail his kick, hitting the floor as he wasn't able to react before falling. Lee turned his head while he still was on the floor, checking on the monster he had just seen, figuring that it was just the same girl from before staring directly at him with a seemingly confused face. Lee stood up, thinking he had just hallucinated, finding that the monster was hiding behind the girl, giving him a wide and horrifying smile. Guy raised one of his eyebrows as he saw the horror Lee had seemed to be in, but yet not being able to see what caused him such fear. Neji could only shake his head in utter disappointment for his teammate. Could it be a genjutsu? Guy asked to himself. Gohan noticed a sudden downgrade in the girl's energy as a demonic version of herself, which probably had been scaringly materialized. Guy's student was quick to attack the thing out of fear, combining his powerful kicks and blows with his screams. However, the demonic version of the girl seemed to be strong enough to resist the taijutsu expert's blows. This gave Yakumo some confidence that she would normally lack at such important moments, deciding to prepare another genjutsu to support the one he had already created, noticing that her chakra reserves were already low. Her hands made several gestures once again, not even being noticed by the horrified Lee, who was fighting with almost his full force against the demonic version of the girl. As time passed and the demon-like creature kept receiving blows from the erratic genin, the creature was starting to go weaker and weaker, not being able to resist the blows anymore. Yakumo noticed this, and hurried with his current supporting genjutsu, which was taking more time to create as the lack of her paintings were causing her problems to give them a proper image. In the hands of the Kurama clan member, a great and golden spear materialized in her hands, appearing to be quite light as the girl was perfectly able to hold and throw it without looking as strong as you'd need to be to carry such a weapon. Unfortunately for her, Lee grabbed the spear before her creation did and used it to destroy it. The taijutsu expert saw the exact same clothes and hair from the girl, not noticing that her head was still human, and went to attack her. The genjutsu prodigy made desperately made gestures with her hand, materializing a shield that blocked the spear that had been thrown at her, both tools vanishing as soon as they touched each other. Yakumo, now having run out of chakra, covered herself with her thin and weak arms, hoping to survive the thrash she was about to receive. I surrender, she desperately yelled, snapping Lee out of his horrified state and taking some time to analyze the one who was in front of him, finding the girl from the start of the fight covering herself from him. Alright I guess. Hayate said, being sure that if the girl had been able to cause that many problems to her opponent, she would have perfectly been able to win. The winner is Rock Lee. Huh? A confused Rock Lee raised one of his thick eyebrows trying to understand what just had happened, but leaving the arena horrified as he remembered the existence of the demonic creature. Yakumo just stood up back straight and, disappointed in herself, went back with her team. She was received by a hug from Shiho and a palm in the back by Nobuyuki. Genma gave her a thumbs up in approval for her performance. We just need to work in those chakra reserves. The Junin said with a comforting voice. The screen started to choose between random words, forming two names little by little, finally showing the next two contenders after a couple of minutes. Those names were the ones of Gaara of the Sand and Nobuyuki Hyuga, and although the Hyuga was quite confident in himself after the certain ability he had gained back in the Forest of Death, he didn't know who he was facing. As normal, his team encouraged, which he really appreciated, but when he was already down in the arena, the face of his opponent, emotionless, unsettled him. Fight! Hayate yelled, marking the beginning of the match. From the start, Nobuyuki imagined he was about to fight someone as talented as Neji or maybe even superior than the Hyuga genius, but at least he was ready for anything. Gaara remained still, staring with emotionless eyes directly at the half Hyuga. Nobuyuki did not hesitate to take advantage from this lack of movement, dashing at his opponent with his gentle fist ready, activating his Byakugan in the way. The facts that a Hyuga did not have white eyes and that the Byakugan could only activate in one of his eyes made him really interesting for Gaara, who got ready to block everything he had. The first palm was instantly blocked from a long distance by a wall of sand that fell apart immediately after blocking his attack and going back to the redhead's pumpkin hanging in his back. The half Hyuga kept attacking with quick palm hits, failing to land a single blow and earning Neji's laughs as a result. These laughs started to disappear as each palm Nobuyuki tried to deliver became faster than the last one, starting to result in the half-Hyuga's desperation. Gaara remained creepily emotionless during the entire match up until that point, as if the sand was making everything by itself. Nobuyuki, now on his limit, started to change directions, surrounding a circle of sand that was constantly blocking his attacks, getting him further from Gaara each time he attacked. The farther he found himself from the redhead, the more frustrated he became and the more anger-driven the palms got. His chakra draining and energy going down, he was finally done with the damn sand, and decided to fight with everything. He tried to emulate the way he activated the Byakugan in his right eye to activate the Sharingan in the other one, finding that something was wrong as he wasn't able to. At that moment, he noticed that the redhead had turned to look at him, also noticing the sand streams that aimed at him, dodging it thanks to his Byakugan. Despite dodging the first attack, a second stream of sand was able to catch him, proving the disadvantages of possessing just one Byakugan. The sand covered his entire body in a matter of seconds, being followed by it starting to crush him. The now desperate Hyuga activated his Sharingan, figuring it out and desperately thinking of a way out of that situation. At that moment, he remembered seeing Sasuke perform his fireball jutsu once, and having been taught about the abilities of the Sharingan in the academy, he decided to try and emulate said jutsu, not thinking about the possible burns he could get as he was trapped in the sand. Fire style. Great fireball jutsu. The half Hyuga yelled, being heard from outside the sand and making Kakashi widen his only visible eye as a great fireball came out of the sand, destroying it and giving Nobuyuki the opportunity to escape. Every Junin and Genin present in the room, except for Gaara of course, was totally shocked as Nobuyuki emerged out of the sand with a Sharingan in his left eye. His took his burnt gray sweater and threw it away, now only wearing a sleeveless net shirt in the upper part of his body. This can't be, Hayate said, his face still filled with utter shock. A Sharingan and a Byakugan. Is this even possible? A shocked Might Guy asked Kakashi, receiving a negative response. Neji watched astonished as the half Hyuga, the kid he had teased almost his entire life, became the favorite to get the rank of Chunin as he now possessed two dojutsus. Lee, Naruto, Shikamaru and the rest of the genin joined Neji in his absolute astonishment. Gohan, while not comprehending the dojutsus at their full extent, knew both the importance they held in that world and how much it increased the capabilities of a shinobi. This ends now, Nobuyuki said as he made the gestures to perform another fire jutsu. Fire style. Great fireball jutsu. The fire broke through the several walls of sand that raised as the half Hyuga advanced, although he couldn't last long as his chakra drained too quickly. From there on, he'd have to rely solely on his speed, strength and abilities to dodge the attacks against him. Several walls raised in his way, but he just avoided them and continued his quick advance towards the redhead. Each wall was thicker and larger than the last one, which started to concern the half Hyuga profoundly, as his way to victory got harder by the second. Finally, the wall became too large to avoid, which Nobuyuki imagined to require more sand, which made them thinner. He figured that maybe breaking holes out of the walls with his palms could be affordable, which he did. Surprisingly for such a brute tactic, it worked, helping the half Hyuga get closer to the redhead, and after some more minutes of running and breaking holes out of the walls, he finally reached his opponent, who stared directly at him with now an angry expression. He got his palm ready, even extended it, and he could swear he brushed his hair before being sent away. He saw it coming, of course he did, he possessed both the Byakugan and the Sharingan, after all. The hit was so strong that it left him nailed in the wall, some bones broken along with his spirit, which had been obliterated more than his physical body after such a defeat. And if the ability of Nobuyuki of activating both the Sharingan and the Byakugan, the way Gaara defeated him like nothing made them even worse. Hayate had to intervene the fight and cut the stream of sand that was about to finish the double dojutsu warrior. You win, but there's no need to continue, Hayate firmly said, giving a serious look to Gaara, who retreated his sand back to the pumpkin in his back. The fight's already over, the lizard expert called Genma as he grabbed the barely conscious and bloody Genin and, as soon as Genma arrived, handed him over. Shiho and Yakumo followed their teacher to the nursery, not being stopped as they had already fought their matches, great concern painted in their expressions. Gohan could just stare at Gaara, who seemed to calm down again and went back to the platforms. The genin from the sand were acting like nothing had happened, but the genin from the leaf were just simply astonished, even fearful, at the way someone as seemingly powerful as Nobuyuki had been thrashed. Hayate proceeded with the matches, ignoring what had happened. The screen showed the names of the next contenders, giving Hayate something to say after such an event. Shikamaru, Nara and Kintsuchi. Both genin snapped out of their astonishment and went down to the arena, quickly finding themselves facing each other. The Nara had gotten too much time to think about an universal strategy, but he still had to see if it worked in the girl. Hayate gave the signal for the battle to begin. Kin was quick to throw several Senbon at Shikamaru, who struggled to dodge them, getting some of them nailed. He grabbed two of his kunai and started dodging the Senbon and blocking the ones that were impossible for him to avoid. After several Senbon, there was a moment in which the kunoichi stopped her attack, which Shikamaru used to execute his plan. He was once again interrupted by a Senbon attack, now receiving all three of them in his left arm. He ignored the Senbon and threw his own kunai, using that as a distraction to catch his signature jutsu. Ha! Nice try, rookie. Kin said, being followed by a playful and soft laugh from the Nara. Look at your shadow. The confident Genin said, grinning as he spoke. The kunoichi was just in front of the wall, which gave Shikamaru a funnier idea. He grabbed a shuriken from his pocket and threw it to the kunoichi, who followed his movements as the technique forced her to. Although as Shikamaru dodged the shuriken thrown by the kunoichi, she emulated the moves, hitting her head with the wall and falling unconscious. Hayate resisted his laughter. The winner is Shikamaru Nara. Team 10 cheered for their teammate and laughed at how silly the defeat of Kin had been. Team Dosu just face-palmed or looked away from the embarrassing defeat their teammate had suffered. Seems we'll all go through, there's only you missing, Choji. Ino said as the Akamichi nodded back in response. I hope I at least do well. Choji said as he ate his chips. I wonder who's going next. Naruto said, turning to Kakashi, who shrugged in response. He was the only member of his team that hadn't fought up to that point, which made him quite disappointed as he was really excited to show to everyone that he wasn't as weak as everyone thought he was. Even with his excitement to fight, he still remained concerned for the bad state, mentally for Sasuke and physically for Sakura. His teammates had left the arena and the fact that despite her damage Sakura had decided to stay there just worsened this concern. Maybe you'll finally fight, Naruto. Sakura replied, smiling at her teammate as she was sitting behind the railing of the platform they were standing on. Kakashi just remained expectant of what was to happen, already determined to train Sasuke and try to prevent many things he already saw coming with the influence of Orochimaru in the life of the young Uchiha. As for Sakura, he was as concerned for her as he could be, taking in mind the little time he had spent with the girl and how irritating she could turn out to be. Close to them, Team 10 were also expectant for Choji's match as he was the one he was missing. Everyone except Gohan, that is, as he had remained concentrated in the redhead genin from another village that had just obliterated the one that had surprised everyone due to having what he had read to be powerful dojutsus. He was also surprised, given that his ki increased a quite considerable amount once he activated the Sharingan, surpassing by far the level managed by ninja of his level. I hope Choji doesn't suffer what that other guy did. The half Saiyan said, mainly to himself, but he also wanted the rest to hear him. Ino noticed this, thinking that it was cute that he cared so much for people, putting her hand on his shoulder. Don't worry, I don't really think they'll let anyone else die in the preliminaries. Gohan turned to her, giving her a concerned expression. Someone actually died today, remember? His teammate's answer was cut out by the referee's voice, who coughed to get everyone's attention. The preliminaries are getting closer to an end, Hayate said with his typical tired and indifferent tone. The next match will be between Naruto Uzumaki and Dosu Kinyuta. Let's go. Naruto yelled victorious, raising his fist up, jumping to the arena from the platform after this, emulating what Lee had done before. After he fell down, he figured it was a bad idea, rubbing his butt after it had hit the floor. Kakashi facepalmed as everyone else just laughed or cringed at such a stupid thing to do. Dosu, the opponent Naruto was to fight against in the match, laughed at him as he arrived at his place in the arena. This seems to be an easy win for me, huh? You shouldn't be so sure about that. Naruto had his determination painted in his face, getting in his fighting stance as he spoke. Go, Hayate said, marking the start of the blonde's attack. Naruto approached his opponent with the intentions of landing a punch in his stomach, but he was thrown away by a sound wave so strong that forced him to go away. The masked genin from the sound took this as the confirmation of his advantage. In response, the blonde genin grabbed a handful of shuriken in each one of his hands, throwing them at the masked shinobi. That's such a simple and predictable thing to do, Dosu said in a mocking way, I don't get why you keep doing it. He deflected the shurikens with another sound wave, which Naruto used to find out where they were coming from. So, it's your arm. Naruto had already moved away as the shurikens landed in the floor, surprising Dosu as he expected the blonde boy to be incompetent. Dosu's eyes widened as much as they could as the same blonde kid that had just fallen down on his butt created what seemed to be, at least, 20 shadow clones. Each Naruto, including the original one, ran in different directions all around Dosu, who was just overwhelmed by the great amount of clones. Each Naruto threw another handful of shurikens, which forces Dosu to use both his arms to deflect the ones that came directly at him. Suddenly, 3 Narutos exchanged places with the shurikens, which took the sound nin by surprise. The trio of Narutos kicked the Genin's face while still being in air, which caused the opponent to throw two powerful sound waves from both his arms as a reflex, then falling down unconscious, victim of the powerful triple kick he had received. One of the clones exploded in a cloud of smoke as the sound wave hit it, while the other Naruto hit by a sound wave was the original one, causing him to fall down with a severe damage in his ears, the left one being covered by blood. Naruto stood up as he checked on his ear with his hand, confirming that he was bleeding from his ears. Sakura tried to stand up as she saw her teammate injured, but Kakashi prevented her from doing it, shaking his head in disapproval. He still understood the girl's concern and went to check on Naruto himself. As Dosu Kinuta appears to have been knocked out, Naruto Uzumaki is the winner of the fight. Hayate announced as he raised his right arm and pointed to the blonde genin. Kakashi was already in the arena when Naruto started celebrating, which prevented the kid from noticing Kakashi. You shouldn't be so happy, Naruto, the silver-haired ninja said, his voice as soft and indifferent as always. The kid continued celebrating and yelling how great of a shinobi he was, apparently ignoring the Junin and annoying him in the process. Naruto. This time, Kakashi had yelled as he was almost next to the kid, finally gaining his attention. Oh, Kakashi-sensei, hey. Naruto said with a nervous smile, noticing the fury in his master's only visible eye. Why do you ignore me? Kakashi said with an angry and annoyed tone. Huh, were you calling me? I could swear I didn't hear anything. Naruto said as he rubbed his chin while thinking. It was then when Kakashi acknowledged the severe bleeding in the kid's ear, which led him to a quite concerning conclusion. Wait a minute, let me try something. Kakashi placed his two hands in each side of the kid's head, leaving his right hand next to the kid's left ear and his left hand next to the kid's right ear. He snapped the fingers of his left hand first. Can you hear it? Naruto nodded in response to this. Kakashi then snapped the fingers of his right hand, asking the same question as before. Naruto quickly placed his hand in his damaged ear in response to the pain inflicted by the beeping sound in his ear. Kakashi did not require anything more to confirm his theory. Naruto, your eardrum has been damaged by the attack of that guy, you need to go to the nursery immediately. The silver-haired Junin said with a serious tone in his voice. But I want to watch the rest of the games. Naruto replied as he still covered his bleeding ear with his hand. Well, if you want to lose your hearing, then go ahead. Kakashi replied with a now authoritarian voice. He turned back and pointed to Sakura, who was still sitting down. You too. Guy, take her here, please. Guy quickly grabbed the girl and jumped from the platform while carrying her in his arms, making her scream out of the fear caused by the sudden move. The man wearing the green spandex gave the girl to Kakashi, who then proceeded to take both of his students to the nursery. I hope he gets better. Hinata softly said, making Kiba jealous of her concern for Naruto. He will. Kiba replied as he tried to calm the girl down. Gohan was concerned for Naruto, of course he was, how wouldn't he feel like that when this is just supposed to be a test and not a real battlefield? All he could do for now was just wait, thinking that maybe having taken some time to learn some healing magic from Dend wouldn't have been such a bad idea. The next match will be between Son Gohan and Zaku Abumi, Hayate announced, please come down to the arena to continue with the last two matches. Good luck, Ino kindly said as she gave a palm in the Saiyan's back. Don't lose. Shikamaru said, getting a laugh and nod from the Saiyan. As Gohan jumped to the arena, his landing creating a crater, he found that his opponent had both of his arms were bandaged and probably even broken. This was already enough to take away Gohan's desire to even try to fight, but he figured that at that point he was forced to do it. His muscles were the cause of the intimidation Zaku felt from the Saiyan, who just trembled as he waited for his inevitable defeat. This gesture just eradicated any possibility of Gohan following the tournament, he just couldn't fight against someone that is injured to the point that he cannot defend himself. Fight! Hayate yelled. Zaku, hiding his fear, took one of his arms out and pointed it towards Gohan. Surrender or I shall kill you. Even himself was surprised when his voice didn't crack while talking. Gohan emulated fear in his face, raising his hands in the process. Alright, I surrender. Shikamaru's jaw dropped down directly to the floor as his teammate had just done what he asked him a minute ago not to do. Next to him, the also shocked Ino and Choji, who almost choked with one of his chips, stood with their eyes totally widened. Behind them, Asuma's cigarette dropped from his now opened mouth, a drop of sweat sliding down his forehead. Zaku sighed as soon as he heard those words come out of the Saiyan's mouth, snapping Hayate out of his confusion. Zaku Abumi is the winner. Then, the sick-looking Junin said, I was so sure that Gohan would win. He whispered to himself. Gohan was quick to go back to his place in the platform, apparently not minding the fact that he surrendered, which kind of annoyed Shikamaru. He was received by confused glances, from Team Guy, from Team 8, from Team 5 and from his own team. Although the only glance he minded, outside from his teammates, was Shiho's, which confirmed him the fact that even people like Shiho thought of surrendering, even when justified by such thing as the battle being unfair, was a weird and even bad thing. Why did you surrender? Shikamaru, totally confused, approached him to make the question. I mean, why wouldn't I? Gohan answered, embracing the vision of life his friends and family had taught him. I can't fight against someone whose arms are broken. Choji stopped eating his chips to join the discussion. But what about the exams? You just lost the opportunity of becoming a Chunin. The science answer was cut by the blonde girl, who also intervened. I was sure you would become a Chunin easily, I just don't get why you would do something as surrendering when you clearly had an easy win. Well, I don't care about becoming a Chunin, then. Gohan said with a strong voice. Not if that's what being a Chunin means. Asuma remained silent, lighting another one of his cigarettes and laying on the wall behind him. Didn't you already know what becoming a shinobi even meant, in the first place? Shikamaru replied. The Saiyan turned his glance to the Nara, whose expression only denoted confusion and a chance of annoyance. He had never thought of it, actually, that he had been so dedicated to finding a way to go back home that he took decisions to become something he was ignorant of just to get some money. He had never thought of the moral disagreements he would have with such a position, and yet he never thought of taking that on count and directly accepted it. Fortunately for him, though, Hayate announced what would be the last match of the preliminaries. Choji Akamichi and Kiba Inuzuka. The Junin announced, coughing after doing so. Please come down to the arena. Let's go, Akamaru. Kiba said as he clenched his fist, receiving a bark from his dog in response. Good luck, Kiba. Hinata said with her typical soft voice, which was really cute for Kiba, who smiled widely at the Hyuga's phrase. On the other hand, a discussion had been interrupted in Team 10, which helped to catch the Akamichi by surprise. So I was the last one. Choji lowered his head in disappointment. Don't care much about it, you'll still win. Ino said, giving him a thumbs up and a wide smile. You act like Naruto. Shikamaru replied with an annoyed tone, earning a strong hit from the blonde Kunoichi, who got furious at the comparison between her and Naruto. Gohan ignored the discussion that had just taken place, turning to Choji with a smile as he left for the arena. Good luck. I know you can win this. The Akamichi nodded in a way of thanking the onyx-haired warrior, giving a glance to the hardly dirty purple clothes he was wearing, noticing that the only damage they had received were the mark of the kunai that he received when he protected them back in the Forest of Death. Kiba arrived first at the arena, as his place in the platform was closer to the stairs than the Akamichi's one. They bumped their fists before fighting, they were good friends after all. They adopted their respective fighting stances, Akamaru just showing his fangs, as Hayate slightly bent down to give the starting signal. Fight. The Junin ordered with a strong voice. Kiba and Akamaru were quick to start pressuring on the Akamichi, who knew from the start that he'd have to go on the defensive against the dog trainer. Choji actually had little complications when defending Kiba's attacks, but his dog companion caused him quite a lot of problems, as it always achieved to bite or scratch him. The little dog now turned into the Chips Eater's main objective. Choji took some distance from his opponents, winning enough time to do the hand gestures required for his signature jutsu, although the constant attempts to do it were interrupted by the fast duo of a dog and its master. The dog trainer noticed this, of course, and took advantage of his opponent's slowness at the time of doing jutsus. The only thing that Akamaru and Kiba did was to accelerate the pace of their offensive, creating blurs for the less trained eyes and maximizing the damage received by Choji. Akamaru's bites and scratches pushed the Akamichi to succumb to pressure, taking the desperate decision of making hand gestures while being under attack. By the time he was done with the jutsu, his legs were bleeding severely and his arms were filled with marks from the dog's claws and fangs. Expansion Jutsu. Choji finally yelled, relieving the pressure, concern and even fear that filled his teammates at the moment. His hands increased their size immensely, showing that his technique had been successful. He used his now giant hands to push his opponents back, actually managing to push Akamaru all the way back to the wall, getting it unconscious. Damn it, Kiba said to himself, his face serious and concerned, and honestly, why wouldn't he? His strategy had now been put on critical risk of not being even useful anymore, as it relied basically in the involvement of his dog companion in the battle. If you want to play serious, the Inuzuka said as he made hand gestures, a smirk on his face, then we'll have to play seriously, too. Two shadow clones appeared at each side of the original Kiba, whose smirk now turned into a challenging smile. The original Kiba grabbed two kunai from his pocket, getting in position to attack, but Choji was taken by surprise as the kunai were just thrown to him, one being tied to a smoke bomb. The shadow clones ran directly at the opponent, who had already dispersed the smoke using his giant hands as a fan, while the original one went back to aid Shikamaru. So not only does he have Naruto's hairstyle but he also copies his jutsus. Shino pointed out with his typical silent tone, as if he was speaking to himself. The clones were already gone and the original Kiba had just dodged an attack from the Akamichi along with his dog, who moved to the opposite of his master. Shikamaru, now buffed thanks to the effects of the soldier pill he'd received from Kiba, growled at the Akamichi, who got nervous as he recognized what had happened to Shikamaru. A soldier pill. Choji thought as a drop of sweat went down his face. His hands moved in front of him, now acting as a wall against any possible attack that could arrive from the duo. Little did the Akamichi know of what was coming. Man-beast clone, Kiba said as Shikamaru jumped into his bent-down back. Shikamaru turned into an exact clone of Kiba, both of them now showing off their teeth. Shikamaru, now a clone of Kiba, jumped from his back and got into a beast-like fighting stance. Meanwhile, Choji was unable to see any of what was happening as his giant hands blocked the sight, but he couldn't really afford to lose his main defense against the enemy offense. The duo, now having more animalistic characteristics such as sharp claws, jumped to the attack against the giant hands of the Akamichi, who tried to block them but failed due to the duo's incredible speed. Man-beast taijutsu, fang over fang. Kiba yelled before the two of them turned into a weird type of drill, going through Choji's defense and being hit directly. Choji fell unconscious after the hit, he had not been able to block it and the attack had been just too powerful for him to resist it. Shikamaru turned back into his normal form as his master started celebrating their victory, to which the dog joined. As Choji Akamichi isn't able to continue fighting, the winner of the battle is officially Kiba Inuzuka. Hayate announced, causing Team 8 to start celebrating while Team 10 got disappointed for his friend's loss, although Gohan was only relieved that he had survived the fight. That gives an end to the preliminary exams, so once I'll go ahead and explain the rules of the third phase, so you will have to explain the injured that are in the nursery what I'm about to explain to you. Oh, don't worry about that, Hayate, I'll do it myself. Hiruzen's voice filled the arena, catching everyone by surprise. The third entered the arena through the main entrance, followed by his assistant, who was still bandaged. First of all, I want to congratulate you all for your performance in your respective matches, you have all fought admirably, with the will of fire burning in your spirit. This statement surprised everyone even more, as they could swear that the old man had left the place. Taking that apart, I will proceed to explain the third phase and its rules. At this point, the Hokage had already gone back to the position he was before the preliminaries started. The third and last phase of the exams will be held in a month from now, this is because we believe you all need to have time to prepare. Now, the rules are basically the same of the preliminary matches, the only difference being that there will be an audience. The matches will be announced 2 days before the day of the matches. He made his typical smile. This would give an end to the preliminary matches, therefore, you are free to leave. The Genin and Junin present followed the Hokage's suggestion, noticing that more than a suggestion it was an order. Before he left, Asuma grabbed Gohan's shoulder while still smoking his cigarette. Gohan raised his eyebrow in confusion. I need to talk to you later, so let me know when you can, Asuma said with a calm and relaxed tone, it's about being a shinobi. Gohan nodded in response, already knowing what he would tell him. Maybe tomorrow. Alright, see ya in the training camp. Asuma said as he waved and left for the entrance. The Saiyan turned to his teammates, who were still talking, even Choji, who was still bleeding. See ya. Goodbye, Gohan, Ino enthusiastically and kindly said, waving back at him. Bye, whatever. Shikamaru indifferently said. Bye. If you're eating dinner outside, make sure to invite me. Choji said as he smiled and gave Gohan a thumbs up. A day had gone by after the preliminary matches for the Chunin exams, giving place for the month-long break for the remaining genin to prepare and rest before the final challenge of the exams. Most of the genin of the Leaf had gone out to either celebrate or just to spend time with their teammates, some even going to the hospital to visit their injured teammates. Between those, Team 5 and Team 7. Genma, Yakumo and Shiho went to visit the severely injured Nobuyuki, who had actually won much prestige after revealing his capability of using both of the Leaf's dojutsus, so much that even the likes of Danzo Shimura, known for being the third's advisor, visited him. Once such visit was over, one that even Genma was surprised about, the Junin in charge of Team 5 decided to explain how he had decided to handle his students' training. I'm glad you're getting better, Nobuyuki. Your performance in the preliminaries was remarkable, never mind the fact that you lost. Genma said, getting a smile out of the Hyuga. Now, I need to talk to you about the training during this month. Oh, right, I also wanted to talk to you about it, Genma-sensei. Shiho said, clearly relieved because her teacher brought the topic before her. Will we continue to train as well or will we have to train on our own? Nobuyuki asked, his face turning serious. His interest in training was given by the humiliating defeat he'd suffered in his match of the preliminaries, where he'd been proven not to be strong enough. He had promised his father to become the strongest Hyuga alive, and so he would. You will have to wait until you are recovered, so forget about it. Genma replied, his voice strong and demanding, although suddenly changing to a softer tone as he turned to his other student. But Yakumo can join us if she wants to. Yakumo nodded in response, accepting to join them in their training. Could you help me with my chakra control, Genma-sensei? I waste too much chakra with every genjutsu. She said, her softness reflected on her voice, although Genma knew that she wasn't as weak as she seemed to be. We'll have to work on that, but there's just some jutsus that inevitably waste lots of chakra. The Junin explained. But maybe we'll achieve something, women tend to have better chakra control. Huh, really? Nobuyuki asked, raising one of his eyebrows in confusion. I thought you learned that in the academy. Genma said as he scratched his head. That's why most of the medical shinobi are kunoichi, so yeah. We did learn about that, it's just that Nobuyuki was never one with amazing results in the academy. Yakumo said as she mocked her teammate with mean faces. Don't lie, I have always been an amazing student. Nobuyuki replied, wanting to move but feeling a lot of pain every time he tried to, causing him to remain in his bed, staring at Yakumo. Shiho only watched the conversation silently, as she did most of the time. She had always been a quiet girl, after all. You're lucky, though, Yakumo. Genma said, interrupting the conversation between the two other genin. He had to explain what he meant as all of his students got confused expressions. You are both a girl and a member of the Kurama clan, so that means your chakra control is better and your ability in genjutsu remarkable. Genma said, reminding them about the Kurama clan, which had been exiled a couple of years prior. And what about me? I'm a Hyuga, Nobuyuki protested, receiving a confused glance from both his teammates. Half Hyuga, you mean? I actually had forgot about this, but we need to talk. Genma said, scaring his student with his menacing stare. You never mentioned your mother was an Uchiha. Wait, what? Yakumo asked before her jaw dropped. Uchiha and Hyuga as a couple. There's no way. Half Uchiha. A shocked Shiho asked, her eyes widened. My mother what? Nobuyuki asked back with a confused expression. An Uchiha. He remembered his first years in the clan, always separated from his father, who was despised by those of both the main and secondary branch. Didn't you know about it? Genma confusedly asked. I don't even remember how she looked like. Nobuyuki said, his tone softer and weaker than before. My father told me she went on a trip, but if she was an Uchiha. Itachi Uchiha, Shiho added, lowering her head as she took her glasses off to clean them. That explains your ability to awaken both the Byakugan and the Sharingan, but. Genma scratched his chin. Aren't you supposed to actually lose both instead of having them? Doesn't matter, maybe we'll get an explanation later, let's just focus in something different. He cleared his throat before continuing. Did you know that I used to be a guard of the Hokage? That story again? Yakumo, annoyed, asked. Meanwhile, Kakashi decided to reunite Team 7 and visit Sasuke in the hospital, using the time to explain how their training would proceed, having already chosen to only train Sasuke as Naruto would train with Ebisu. Once they were in Sasuke's hospital room, Kakashi raised his voice. As you know, you've been given a month to prepare for the next phase of the exam. Kakashi said with his typical calm tone, getting the attention of his students. And someone has to take care of you for that month. He scratched his head before continuing, and I chose Sasuke. What do you mean you chose Sasuke? Naruto angrily yelled. I also got to the next round. Calm down, you will train with Ebisu. Kakashi indifferently said as he waved Naruto's yells away. Ebisu, that weakling. Naruto disappointedly asked. Why won't you train me too? Sasuke just stared at the two of them discussing from his hospital bed, not caring much about it as he was being trained by the silver-haired Junin. On the other hand, Sakura was also disappointed that her teacher wouldn't help her with training, although she kind of understood why, it being because she didn't go on to the next round. I don't have much time to train all of you, that's why. Kakashi answered. He knew in his insides that he was lying, but he needed to say something. Whatever, I'll still become a Chunin and become Hokage. Naruto yelled, pointing to the Junin's face. You'll see. Kakashi-sensei. Sakura raised her voice, catching her teacher by surprise, him turning to her with his eyes widened. What about me? Damn it, I forgot about her, think. Kakashi cleared his throat before answering. You didn't go on to the next round, so I don't think it is necessary to train you. Oh, I see. Sakura disappointedly replied, lowering her head as she remembered her defeat against Ino, who was clearly superior to her. Don't worry, Sakura, you can train with Ebisu and me. Naruto said, giving her a thumbs up and receiving a nod from the girl. I was saved by Naruto. Kakashi thought. Alright, then, it's settled. The attacks taken from Neji had left Hinata in a severe state, unconscious and having been close to death as her heart stopped shortly after being taken to the nursery, but she was rescued by the medical shinobi that achieved to revive her with chakra pulses. This made it impossible for Kurenai to even hope to train her within that month, forcing her to exclude the shy girl from her plans. Nevertheless, her other two students had gone through to the next phase of the Chunin exams, which still made her feel quite proud, generally speaking. She had told both of them to meet at one of the training camps, and there they were when she arrived, which she expected from Shino but not from Kiba. What a surprise, Kiba, you're here early. Kurenai remarked, laughing as the dog trainer smiled nervously. Anyway, I asked you to come because we need to talk about your training during this month. Oh, so will we get some training from you? Kiba excitedly asked. The red-eyed Junin nodded in response, which interested Shino, as he felt that being trained by a Junin would be quite beneficial to him. I see you two are interested, I'm glad. Kurenai said, catching the expressionless bug expert by surprise. I will become stronger so I'll defeat that Neji guy. Kiba stated, his fist working as a manifestation of his determination. I'll never forgive him for what he did to Hinata. Kurenai's face got decorated by a little and subtle smile. I see you like her pretty much, Kiba, that's so cute. Yeah, she's really cute. The dog trainer said before cringing at the realization of what he'd just said. Do you at least care to try to hide it anymore? Shino, annoyance filling the sound of his voice, asked. Kurenai laughed at both of them, although they couldn't be mad at her as that laugh was a sweet one more than a mocking one, which caused Kiba to join the laughs, and Shino to smile behind the turtleneck of his jacket as he shook his head. Winning was all Neji could think of, it was his destiny, which he had started to accomplish since his triumph over the heir of the main branch of the clan. Multiple times had his teacher told him to leave that idea of destiny, which he thought to be bad for the Hyuga genius, but Neji refused to give up on his principles, he refused to let go of his hatred. The day before, Might Guy had told all three of his students to meet at the training camp, where he would be waiting for them, patiently and excitedly. In said training camp, Guy waited for his students to arrive, who arrived at the exact hour he had told them to. Neji showed up with his typical clothes, just as Lee did, although Tenten had her arms and legs covered with bandages as a result of her match in the preliminaries. Welcome, my youthful students. The Junin said, trying to retain his tears of pride. I'm really proud of you, your youth is truly admirable. He finally succumbed to tears. Guy-sensei, Lee said before joining his teacher's tears and hugging him. The sight of both shinobi, same hairstyle and clothes, caused Tenten to cringe as Neji just shook his head. The duo rushed to the other two members of the team, forcing them to join the hug. Tenten managed to escape first from the hug, being followed by Neji, who palmed one of Lee's arm, leaving it numb and escaping through the space it left. After a couple more minutes, the green spandex duo finally got apart, giving space for a change of atmosphere as Guy adopted a serious expression. This managed to get Neji's attention, who had previously heard that his teacher was actually one of the strongest shinobi in the village, but believed it to be fake given his personality. Tenten was also surprised by the change of attitude her teacher had. Given that two of you managed to go on through to the final part of the Chunin exams, you shall now receive superior training. Guy said, clearly fighting hard to hold the tears of pride back. Tenten, you will also be part of this training. Your performance was remarkable and I'm pretty sure you will achieve to reach the Chunin rank next year. Thanks, Guy-sensei. Tenten said, bowing at the Junin, but cringing as soon as she noticed that he had started to cry again. Guy cleared his throat before continuing, tears already escaping his eyes. Excuse me, I am just a little bit emotional today. He cleared his throat once again. Your training will start by tomorrow, so feel free to come here by the same time. Also doesn't matter if you need some time to rest, just let me know. Neji, disappointed in his teacher, nodded before leaving the place. Tenten, who actually intended to train with the Junin as she was perfectly conscious of his capability in Taijutsu, nodded, also leaving the place shortly after. Lee got a firm stance and bowed, showing his gratefulness to the Junin. The day before, his teacher had told him to meet at that same training camp, the one he and his teammates had their brief training on, at that same hour. Under the intense midday sun, a calm half-Saiyan meditated, his body levitating as a result of his meditation, and his purple clothes, similar to those given by Piccolo to him, were soaked by his sweat. For him, his teacher had already took too long, although he always preferred to wait, a clear result of Piccolo's teachings. As a drop of sweat went down his face, from the forehead to the chin, going through the closed right eye and the side of the nose, the click of a lighter filled the once silent training area, where only the sound of the grass and leaves of trees dancing was heard. Gohan's black eyes opened, his sight catching the figure of his teacher, who was smoking a cigarette, his expression calm as it mostly was. The Saiyan's feet stood in the grass, the sound getting Asuma's attention, whose eyes turned to his young student. The son of the third sat down in the grass, taking the cigarette out of his mouth and breathing the pure air provided by the plants, his sight suddenly turning nostalgic for a moment, turning back into their serious counterpart rapidly. As the cigarette went back to his mouth, his gaze went back to the onyx-haired foreigner, that mysterious kid that came down from the sky, who had imitated his movements and had sat down in the same position he had previously held during his meditation. One cloud of smoke came out of his mouth before speaking. I used to train here with many friends, it brings really good memories. Asuma said, his cigarette moving slightly as he smiled. He smoked once more, erasing that smile from his mouth. As well as really sad ones. The cloud of smoke emitted by him hid his hurt expression. But that's just one more part of my job. A pair of onyx eyes were now staring directly at the calm Asuma, their owner calm himself, but curious of what the one in front of him was trying to reach with what he was saying. The memories of losing Piccolo, Krillin, his own father and now his family went quickly through his mind, interrupted by the typically relaxed voice of his teacher. Many of us dream from a really young age to be a shinobi, one of those heroes that protect our home with their lives, those heroes that represent the very will of fire, those heroes that receive honors from the Hokage himself, those heroes that everyone loves and admires. Asuma paused for a moment to smoke from his cigarette. Those same heroes that participate in constant wars, those same heroes that suffer many losses throughout their short lives, those same heroes that do not even say goodbye to their loved ones before dying. Gohan waited for a couple of seconds before speaking up. He didn't want to interrupt what he thought was a monologue being held by his teacher, but those seconds demonstrated that more than a monologue, it was supposed to be a discussion, that his teacher cared about his view. I see that a shinobi has quite a powerful meaning in this world, which makes me think that maybe I've misunderstood the concept. The Saiyan opened his eyes and turned them to the son of the third Hokage. In the place I come from, the heroes are those that save the world, the universe, the heroes are those like my father. Gohan remembered Goku saying goodbye before taking the gigantic mass Cell had turned to at that point, dying along with the bio-android and King Kai. But through his life, he's also killed, like a shinobi does, for what we believe to be the greater good. Asuma nodded as the Saiyan's eyes asked if a shinobi was like he'd just described. But I'd be lying if I said that everyone or even the majority were what a shinobi is supposed to be. Sarutobi let another cloud of smoke out of his mouth. Many commit horrible things, that unfortunately aren't crimes when they are affiliated to one of the hidden villages. But I would be lying too if I said that there's no wonderful or just good shinobi out there, because they're out there, sharing the same place as horrible people. I think I get it now. Gohan wanted to learn more about many things of that world, but he still had the urge to find a way to go back to his world, which he already missed quite badly. It doesn't take the fact that I don't like that way of living, I despise killing. So do I and many others, but unfortunately, it is sometimes necessary and mostly inevitable. Asuma explained, his tone serious and calm. Gohan didn't like that answer, but he kept his composure. Isn't there another way? I've always found myself surrounded by death and suffering, trained harshly from a really young age, forced to fight when I didn't want to. I'd like to think that there is another way of fighting without including death. And maybe there is in certain cases, but as I told you, sometimes it is necessary. Asuma said as he stood up. But don't worry, you will understand it one day, and I'll be there to see it. He extended his arm, helping Gohan stand up, even though it wasn't necessary. I see you came early, that's great. The silhouettes of his friends were suddenly recognized by his onyx eyes, which took him by surprise. As they approached him and his teacher, Gohan figured that they had come because Asuma needed to tell them something, but he didn't really mind their visit. He was hugged by Ino, which took him by surprise, but not disliking it at all. Choji bumped his fist with the Saiyans, opening Gohan's hand after doing so and leaving a chip in his hand. Enjoy, the Akamichi said as he gave him a friendly smile. Shikamaru, on the other hand, went directly to greet Asuma, ignoring the presence of the Saiyan. This affected Gohan slightly, but he preferred to let it flow, as he believed time would solve things. Alright, so I called you here because we need to organize how your training will be managed during this month. The Junin explained. Choji and Gohan will be included in our training even though they didn't make it into the final part of the exams. He let a cloud of smoke go out of his mouth before continuing. Any doubts, objections? No, Asuma-sensei. Ino quickly answered. It'll be quite efficient to train with Gohan, he's really strong. Choji excitedly said. Whatever. Shikamaru indifferently said as he looked away. Before Gohan could object to his teacher's decision, Asuma spoke up. It's settled then, we'll start by tomorrow, alright. Alright, Ino excitedly replied, being followed by Choji and Shikamaru, who nodded in response. Gohan hesitated, and a lot, but a kind smile from Asuma, along with the excited face of Choji and the even happier face of Ino convinced him to accept, remaining silent, which everyone took as a yes. Maybe I can show them there's another way. Thank you for watching What If Gohan Was Sent to Naruto World and Became Part of Shinobi Part 3. Hope you like my video. Please subscribe, like and share Roronoa TV for more fanfiction crossover videos.